There we go. And we are live. Welcome to the meeting of the Ways and Means Education Subcommittee, 3rd of April. We have really 6 bills to consider, but really only 3. I'm going to read the Senate bills as they have come over and as we have amended them. In each case, there is a matching House bill which hasn't been sent to the Senate yet. We will get that bill in exactly the same format as the Senate bill that we have and send it. So I think we're going to deal with the Senate bill, and if everybody is okay with this, the understanding will be is that we will also be attaching the Senate bill. I will read the House bill. I will read you the number of the House bill that is being simultaneously considered. Without objection? Okay, seeing none. First bill is Senate Bill 923, which has as its companion House Bill 1483. We will go after Senate Bill 923. Wait, we have Alster?
Yes,
Oh, there he is. There he is. I didn't see him. Okay, thank you. Senate Bill 923 is High School Officiating Services Procurement Requirements Bill. What this would do is, in general, the attempt is to get officials that are working boys and girls sports, which are similar, and we'll talk about what that means in a second, that are similar, that they would be paid the same. Okay, that's the large goal. We have added some amendments and we've worked toward it. MPSSAA, the Maryland Public School Maryland Public Secondary School Athletic Association, will help and will consult with MSDE in developing a list of sports that would be considered similar with certain requirements that were already in this bill to begin with in terms of the amount of time and the season it's played. And this is high school sports only that we're talking about here. A couple of clarifications from MPSSAA, and I thank I lost his last name. Alster, what's his last name? Andy Warner. Andy Warner?
I think that's right.
Yeah, Andy Warner of MPSSAA for working with us very carefully on this. So they will produce a list. They will not produce a list of sports that are dissimilar. It's just they don't make the list. You don't make the list. We will require them to update the list every 3 years with MSDE in case new sports appear, like pickleball, or who knows what will creep its way into the high school sports milieu. We also are clear that when they procure, if they procure within they need to procure within a reasonable period of time with each other. There has been evidence that sometimes when they procure, they wait and they say, see, now it's more expensive, so we can pay these guys more. So we want them to do it in the same time frame so that they are getting them at the same time. And also that we are clear that different LEAs, in this case, counties, as we say, county boards, can set their own rate. So we're not saying it's a statewide rate. We're clear about that in the bill as well, that it's a rate within the county or the city. The use of the word county here legally does, since we're talking about the school boards, does cover Baltimore City as well. Are there any details I missed? Okay, excellent. Does anybody have any questions on the amendments? The amendments put it in that form. The bill had a lot of other language, but we tried to simplify it and boil it down to what I've just said. Okay, I'll take a motion on the amendments then.
Move favorable on the amendments, Mr. Chair.
A second? Thank you, Delegate Miller. Okay, I have the amendments are moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor of the amendments, please raise your hand. There she is, my vice chair. Nice to see you. And so we are. I've lost the word. We all voted the same. Okay. And bad cow. So it's on the bill as amended. I'm having too much fun today.
Move favorable with
I'll try to have less fun if I can.
Second.
And I got a second. All in favor? Any further discussion on the bill as amended? All in favor of the bill as amended, please raise your hands. And we are, what's the word? Unanimous on that. Thank you. So we will be sending that bill back to the Senate along with House Bill 1483 in exactly the same posture. You'll see them both come by on the floor, and we will vote on both of them in committee. Okay, that finishes that one. Next one is Senate Bill 14. No, I'm on House Bill. Sorry, Senate Bill 130. Senate Bill 130.
Sorry, that one was done already, sir. The other two are Senate Bill 845.
Oh, I'm sorry. I started farther in my folder. Sorry. I didn't realize I was in my folder as far as I was. I was wondering why that one was first, and now I know. The next one is Senate Bill 845. And Senate Bill 845 goes along with House Bill 1025. This is local education agencies, educator screening. This is a bill. There have been situations where people have sort of falsified their records or had a flag on their license prior to applying. This simply says that there's a group that could be used. We don't name them as the absolute procurement, but to screen those kinds of applications to look for it. This is not a criminal background check. This is really a flag for behavior. For example, if somebody got the story goes, the example that we have is that in Texas, somebody had a license and they didn't proctor a test properly, and they let some students have cell phones in their pockets, and they were cited for it on their license. And they come here and they apply here at the point of hiring. They would do a search and they would find that. It doesn't mean that the county can't hire them. It can mean that they say there's a bad thing and we'll talk to them about it, make sure that they're clear, that they have to follow our rules, and they can hire them. Or they could say, this is just a terrible thing. We can't trust this person. We're not going to hire them. So it does a sort of screening for professional work in licenses. And so we are amending it a bit to get it into that format. I don't know exactly what the amendments were. I think they're mostly technical on that. One of the main ones that they asked for was that they be submitted into the system at the point of hire and not at the point of application. Because Pete Pazam and I see Mary Pat here, if we don't want to ask her about it, said that would be a bit too much for them to have to constantly, with every person that applied, run these checks. And I'll stop there. Alistair, do you have anything to add? Okay. Delegate Fair, I see your hand up.
Yes, I just want to thank you, Mr. Chair. This is we had a lot of discussion about the House version of this bill prior to crossover, and I want to thank Delegate Miller and Delegate Hornberger for really helping to illuminate some of the issues. It looked like Senator Helderman had already attacked these similar issues already and had addressed a lot of the concerns that we had raised forward on this bill. And I really appreciate your work, specifically, Mr. Chair, on getting this bill into posture. And I would move the amendments for the purpose of discussion.
So the amendments are moved, and we'll come back to you, Delegate Miller. Do I have a second on the amendment?
Second.
Okay, so Delegate Miller, you had your hand up. Were you moving it, or did you have commentary?
No. Yeah, just
Question.
commentary.
Right. Delegate Hornberger.
Yeah, sorry. I know the way that the federal government does it is you get a tentative offer, for example, and then the review is done, the security review is done, and then a final monetary offer is given after that is completed.
Okay.
So we don't know if we're dictating the process here, or if that's just food for thought. But is that similar to what the schools have agreed to do here?
That's an excellent question, and I am going to ask Mary Pat Fannin, who represents Pazam, to comment on that, please.
Good afternoon. Yes, that is very much very similar to our process as well. We make most of our offers contingent on a clean background check, as well as if the position requires a license, that they have the appropriate license or going through the license vetting process.
He's backing away from the camera, so I'm assuming he's satisfied with that answer. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mayor Pat. Really appreciate you being here. So I have a motion on the amendments and a second. Is there any further discussion? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor of the amendments, please raise your hand. All hands are up. We're unanimous. And on the bill as amended.
Move favorably as amended.
Thank you.
Second.
And we got a second. Any further discussion on the bill as amended? Okay, seeing none, all in favor of the bill as amended, please raise your hands. Thank you very much. We're unanimous. That will carry with it House Bill 1025. That will carry House Bill 1025 in the exact same stature. Delegate Moon, by the way, that we're giving a look to there. Okay, last one, 887. Okay, I'm on the right page. County Boards of Education, reappointment of incumbent superintendent authorization. Senate Bill 887 says this: someone who is hired as superintendent should be hired by state law for a period of 4 years. If after 2 years, a board of education, a local board of education is enamored and wants to hire them further, they can essentially extend their contract 2 years beyond the 4-year period. They can hire them for 4 years from the point at which they do it. So we're looking at possibly extending them from 4 years to 6 years after they have worked for 2 years. They can continue to do that if they want to. The logic behind this bill is explained to me by the Senate sponsor, Senator King, is that we're trying to create some stability in superintendents. We would like to keep them around if they're doing a good job. And so that's generally the intent of this bill. Did we have to amend it at all, Alistair? I can't remember. No, no amendments necessary. There will be amendments to the House version of this bill to draw it into the same form. There were a couple of things that they sent over, I believe. Is that correct or not? Are they both clean?
No, the House bill needs amendments.
Okay, so we have no amendments on this bill. The amendment, if you vote for this bill, you're essentially saying it's okay. We will amend the House bill as well. And the House bill number is 1512. Okay, other than a sponsor problem, that's a very good bill as well. Delegate Miller, do you have a question?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I had a question about some of the concerns that I brought up in our discussion of it as far as the impact of elections on this, and if you essentially could do it with a lame duck Board of Education, because after an election, the new board members aren't sworn in until December, and so they're still meeting and functioning as a board. And to me, it doesn't matter which way your politics are going. If you had a more, let's say, conservative board, or if you had a more liberal board, and that election has ramifications based on the will of the voters, as far as what they want to see in their school system, and the superintendent was in charge of that for the last 2 years at the will of the board. Now you change the whole board. That board could potentially do a contract with that superintendent for another 4 years from that period.
Yes, I think in this situation, the new board would have to would have the superintendent that was re-upped for 2 years. Then they would not have the opportunity at that time. I think that's the way the bill's written.
Well, they would have to have that if it was rewritten during that time period. They would have to have that superintendent for another 4 years, which would be all of that board's elected term.
No, I don't think so. It's not cumulative. It's 2 years from the date that they decide to do it.
Right, and if they decide to do it after they're a lame duck board, it would be 2 years or another 4-year contract from that point, which would be all of those members' terms.
Alistair, you're shaking your head yes. Is that correct logic?
Yes, it's 4 years beginning in the following July 1st. So
Okay.
this new board that was elected would be able to switch it out 4 years later. There is still, however, the other protections, which I'm sure Mary Pat could speak to in greater detail on superintendents, and they still have to be approved by the state superintendent, and there's still the dismissal protections that are available under the rest of the state code.
Yeah, and they usually they have to either be pretty egregious for dismissal. I'm not sure how the state superintendent or the state board would take that into account, that you just have a new board. But it is, to me, the bill has the potential to supersede the will of the voters. And that causes me great concern in this situation because of the impact that our schools do have communities. And we always say that elections matter and the results of elections matter. And this would be taking away the will of the voter. And then did you want to? Delegate Hornberger had a couple of concerns too.
Yeah, well, hold on a second.
Oh, sorry.
So Mary Pat or Eric Schwartz, do either of you want to weigh in on that concept? Do you feel like I need to clarify it all? I don't see them lighting up. So, okay, there you go.
Yeah, thank you for the opportunity. I would just reiterate, I think, what Senator King said in the hearing, that it could go the other way. I mean, it could be that, it all depends on the timing of the current superintendent's contract. It could be off cycle from the election. So that scenario could happen now or with the bill. So this is, like I said, not about usurping the future board's power, but more about retention. So that's our goal.
Okay. And then Delegate Hornberger, you had something you wanted to kick in.
Yeah, so these contracts are transparent to the public.
Mhm.
So they're negotiated and signed and mutually agreed upon. My concern, and they're for a term of 4 years at the onslaught. My concern is that at the end of year one, the superintendent immediately goes into renegotiation mode for enhanced benefits, pay, etc. you know, as long as they're doing their job. And in essence, now we voided that contractual process on the front end. And this is used as a leverage point to immediately start trying to get additional pay and compensation.
All right.
They
Again,
they
we have,
still.
okay, go ahead, Alistair. I was gonna let either Eric or Mary Pat, but you can go.
Sorry. I was just going to say that they still have to serve 2 years under the bill as the Senate passed it. So it's just changing whether the contract has to be negotiated from March 30th, or I'm sorry, March 1st of the year that they would be up otherwise to July 1st of the previous year. So it's like an extra 20 months or 19 months or something.
Yeah, so my cure for that concern would to say potentially offer an amendment where the only item that would change in the contract is the duration. In other words, we're not going back in and sweetening the pay and sweetening the benefits and the company car and the spouse health coverage and all the other goodies and golden parachutes that these folks have put in to these contracts. I mean, some of these contracts have gotten ridiculous, I think is the best word to use here, with compensation. And if this is truly about retention, then what's good at the onset should be good enough for the 6 years. So I'd like to offer an amendment to say that all they can do is extend the duration of the term.
Okay, so hold that thought. Let's
Yep.
let everybody else talk, and then we'll come back and see if we have a will to do something like that. Okay. Delegate Patterson, I see your hand next to my screen.
Well, thank you very much. I like the bill, having served 12 years as a member and then lastly as the president of the Charles County Board of Ed. And it's really challenging to keep good superintendents in our school system. I think that it's been my experience that when boards have a problem with the superintendent, new board members come in and they have a problem with the superintendent. There are certainly ways to address that, as was done locally in my county. So I support the amendment. I support the bill that Senator King has put forth.
Okay, you said amendment. I just curious, I'm listening in
The bill.
without the amendment. Okay.
Mr. Chair, I'm just making sure you saw my hand.
I did see it. Do you have a commentary? Or you going a different direction here?
I have comments to make.
Okay.
I do have questions about this bill, and I want to make sure that I understand it before I fully form an opinion. So this is saying that in a usual 4-year term, that 2 years in, the contract can be renewed for another 4. So we're at 6 years.
That's accurate.
Halfway through. I'm having questions about this. I know in Montgomery County, we've had some issues around keeping our superintendent, and when and if issues arise, I'm a little bit concerned around having our hands tied because we have too early on potentially renewed. And what are usually, because I know that in our committee, we've also had separate bills related to when a superintendent is fired and some of the requirements around that. So I want to understand if this happens, it's going along well, we have the 2 years, and then there's a renewal of 4 years, and sometime in there, something happens and the school board wants out. What are some of the usual, I assume it might be different county to county, but if there's anything that you can share, Alistair, around some of what the contract breaking and potential costs to the taxpayers could be.
So in statute, removal decisions can be made around immorality, misconduct in office, insubordination, incompetency, or willful neglect of duty. I guess you could possibly contract other things around that, but those are things that can be used to dismiss. So it's a for-cause dismissal, basically, for county superintendents.
Those are sort of egregious types of things. So if we're locked into the 6 years and there isn't something egregious that takes place, but the county board or the taxpayers and residents are unhappy to break the contract, it would have to be one of those egregious measures. And then are there payments that are required? Because when the contract is broken
I
like
think they're
that?
typically written into their contracts when they sign them, different counties. I mean, there was a situation where Howard County had a rather large, as Delegate Hornberger referred to, a golden parachute with a superintendent that they wished to get rid of. And so I think it depends county to county. Mary Pat, Eric, if you guys want to weigh in on any of that, I'm going to let you here because we're sorting some things out. It's critical.
Sure. I just wanted to make a couple of comments. So, the contracts are different. They're negotiated individually between the superintendents and the boards. There are some contracts that have started to include evaluation measures based on student outcomes, or continuation as a superintendent based on metrics that are decided between the superintendent and the board. And then, as we talked about a little earlier, all of those contracts are made available to the public. And I will say, in my experience, even though I've seen a fair amount of superintendents leave because things had gotten to a point where they weren't seeing eye to eye with the board. It wasn't necessarily something that was, in the contract, but clearly it wasn't working and they parted ways. And there haven't been, there's been one or two that have been really contentious. But in my experience, these things tend to work themselves out. The problem is when you have really good relations and someone may be being recruited away, this is an opportunity to say, we want to keep this continuity of a strong, good relationship moving forward. Instead of having to wait another 4 years, you're able to do it earlier. So thank you for the opportunity.
All right. Delegate Fair. You're muted, sir.
I just want to double check that Madam Vice Chair is all done with her questions.
That's my job.
Thank
All right,
you,
thank you.
Delegate Fair.
I just saw the hand. I just saw the hand raised. That's all. I decided.
Please.
I'm sorry. So, thank you. And I absolutely hate to be in disagreement with my colleague from Frederick County, but I do feel strongly that elected officials who represent our communities are elected for a time period from date to date. And so they have the rights to represent their communities as they were elected to those positions from date A to date B. And as was mentioned, that can go in my favor sometimes, in my political favor, and sometimes that can go against my political favor. But because they're in those positions from a certain date to a certain date, I wouldn't want to, remove the hard work that they are doing from beginning to end of their term in office and subvert the will of the voters that put them in that seat in the first place. And so from that concern, I'm not terribly swayed that we should somehow look at this bill in a different posture. This is the Board of Education making decisions with its superintendent to decide to extend their term in office or their term in their position based on the best practices that they have outlined. And so I would be generally in support of the initiative for all the reasons that Mary Pat has outlined and from the testimony that we heard. And so with that, Mr. Chair, I turn it back over to you.
Thank you. As just general commentary, Delegate Vogel.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a quick clarifying question. Remind me when right now the earliest we can extend the contract is?
June 1st of, I'm sorry,
March.
March 1st, I think.
Of the final year?
Yeah.
Okay. So I guess I share some of the concerns here, but I would be swayed, and I brought this question up at the hearing, I remember. I'm not a superintendent. I've never been a superintendent. I don't think I'll ever be a superintendent. But I struggle to understand why this is like the most significant incentive for retention. I do have concerns around, and I know we've used this metaphor of elected officials. I would be concerned about extending my term as delegate, in the first 2 years, because the last 2 years are also important to evaluate my performance. So unless there is a very significant reason for why this is going to help with retention, I could be swayed, but as of right now, I do still have some concerns.
So you sound like you're putting up, like, I'm going to let Mary Pat address that because
It's a question.
support this. And so let's talk about the response to that inquiry.
Sure, thank you. I don't know that it's the silver bullet, and I wouldn't say that it is the silver bullet for retention. What I do know is that we have a lot of turnover, and a lot of the turnover when you speak with people and you ask why they leave, it has been, elected boards are fairly new for the entire state. And I think it has been a little bit of a challenge in retaining superintendents if you look historically. And so we were just trying to figure out ways that we could make it more attractive to come to Maryland. And this is one of the items that came to the top. I mean, as I said in the hearing, we've had 75% turnover since 2019 versus 40% nationwide. So we're really trying to retain our talent. We're trying to keep this continuity. We know that you have better student outcomes when you have administrations that are able to stay longer. That longevity equals positive outcomes. So that's what we're trying to move in that direction.
All right, thank you. Delegate Fair would want me to say, Delegate Vogel, are you done asking questions?
I'm done with the questions.
Thank you.
I just-
Delegate
I
Fair's
know-
tradition. We'll move on to Delegate Wu.
I just want to thank you, Mr. Chair. So I actually went through a process renewing our previous superintendent from Howard County Board of Education. So usually the discussion started like almost half a year earlier, right? Like we start thinking about, okay, talk to the superintendent, said, I was the chair at that time. So I said, do you want to renew your contract, right? And then we began to formalize that. And then around December, we know whether we're able to say we'll renew or not.
When you say around December, can you clarify the timeline? You're saying
Around
when
December,
they're heading in their fourth year.
yeah, in the third year,
Okay, thanks.
right? The third, like
As they're coming up to the end of their term.
yeah, like 6 months before their term,
Thanks.
right? So pretty early discussion because
Mhm.
or the board member, you want to have that stability and the predictability as well, because it takes time to hire a new superintendent. And then you definitely will get a sense how board member will vote, right? And then you will talk to superintendent, and then they will let you know as well. So kind of just personally, I feel pretty smooth in general, unless we couldn't really work with the superintendent. And I share some concern about we're just kind of avoiding some board members have any say for the superintendent hiring, because these were quite another opportunity. Like every 2 years, the superintendent said, I want to renew my contract, right? What happens? Basically, they can overpass the whole, like if you have 5 board members elected in certain year, they can override like 5 board members without voting power, without a say, hiring the new superintendent. I think that can be significant. And that's the reason I asked question. I have some reservation on this bill. Mr. Chair,
Yes.
you're a great sponsor, right?
Well,
I think I know the intention of the bill.
not
I think
to
that's
sidestep, but this bill was initiated by Senator King, and she and I have a very good relationship. And I said I'd be happy to carry it. My bill was in rules in any case until the possibility of it being voted on. So I'm not taking this discussion personally. If anybody thinks that's true, I want to clarify that. This is a good, important discussion for us to have.
May I offer another perspective?
Yes, please, ma'am.
Okay. And Mary Pat can verify this for me. Superintendents are also courted. Counties look at the next superintendent. They look at superintendents who are doing fantastic jobs, wonderful jobs, experiences. And so they are courted by other jurisdictions, other states, other counties. I know that for a fact. And sometimes when you have a new board coming in, as Delegate Miller indicated, it's sort of scary for a superintendent. I will simply say, I know in Southern Maryland, there's a complete turnover in terms of the membership on the board, and their thinking was radically different from the prior board. So as superintendent, I would be very, well, maybe not, but at any rate, I think it's a precaution that we must consider that these people on, it's not just about money, it's also about being assured that you professionally respected and assured of a position, particularly if you're a good superintendent.
Thank you. Delegate Wu again, or did you not?
Yeah, I have another question. I
Okay.
was thinking about it. Actually, I really appreciated Delegate Patterson talk about that. So what happens if at second year, the board said, I want to renegotiate your contract with the superintendent? That means they're not guaranteed 4 years. Actually, they can start renegotiation at second year.
They would then serve another, if they, both sides agreed to a new contract, they would serve another 4 years beginning.
What happens if they don't agree? Does that mean they're not serving?
No,
2
they
years
would-
is
They
done?
complete their 4-year contract then, or whatever,
That would be pretty
escape
bad for the
clauses in
board
their contract.
relationship, right? That a
Sorry,
relationship
sorry.
that will create a very bad relationship between the board and the superintendent,
Oh,
right?
interesting viewpoint. Delegate Fair.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I appreciate the robust conversation. I feel very comfortable with this bill and subject to more discussion during I'd like to move favorable on the bill.
Yeah. First, Delegate Hornberg, before we take that motion, did you want to attempt an amendment on this?
Yes, thank you for that indulgence. I mean, I'd like to just take a step back. These folks are incredibly highly qualified, sophisticated individuals making hundreds of thousands of dollars. So like this whole, the poor superintendents, I mean, they know what they're getting into. This is a top flight job. And these folks are being highly compensated. And in many cases, even if they fail, they get a massive payout. As we've seen in Baltimore City and some of these other jurisdictions. So the amendment was, I don't like this bill. I want to make that very clear. But the amendment was, if they do want to extend these additional 2 years, that it would basically preserve the original intent of the contract, and that the only thing that would change would be the duration. And the rationale for that is because that's what was negotiated and brought them in the door, and that was what was shared with the public. So I think this amendment would make the bill better. If it's truly retention is the goal here, then they should want to stay on for 6 at the same price as the 4.
Okay.
Move the amendment.
Thank you. We got an amendment. Probably a second out there from somebody.
Second.
Okay. Probably moved and seconded. I will, Delegate Vogel.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This isn't on the amendment, it's on the bill as a whole. So
Well, I think we're kind of, we're running wild here. Go ahead.
Okay. So just carrying on from Delegate Wu's point, I think he raises a serious question and a serious concern there, which is if you have this ongoing negotiation over the contract and the superintendent is not satisfied with the new contract for the period after the first 4 years, are they, and then they want to break their existing contract or feel uncomfortable continuing in their current position, what does that mean for that superintendent? Is there a payout in that case, or how would they proceed?
I think it'll be whatever's in their contract as far that it would not abrogate the 4-year contract they signed when they started. So I believe it would, whatever terms were in place would remain in place. There'd be.
And break their contract in that case?
Well, that's what depends what's in their contract as far as breaking their contract goes and what sort of actions are taken if they break their contract. I mean, that's true. All those things are true right now. If a superintendent starts working and they're in for 2.5 years and they don't like it and they want to get out, then we've seen it happen, but there is legal action. There's all sorts of things that takes place in that, I believe, in that situation.
Okay, thank you.
If anybody thinks that's inaccurate, by the way,
I could, Mr. Chair, can I?
oh yeah,
reply to
Delegate
that?
Wu, why don't you,
Yeah.
you've been around it too. So has Delegate Miller.
So Delegate Vogel, right? So I actually have Bill talk about the superintendent contract. You remember that, right? So the challenge is right now is basically superintendent can go with a bigger payout. Then because they can create a situation, couldn't work with the board and ask a big payout, and then generally the board pay them. That happens again and again in Maryland, right? That's the reason I talk about this situation. One, because contract negotiation can be very uncomfortable, right? And then once we create that, I mean, if they couldn't agree, and then eventually the relationship can be solved very quickly, right? Then I don't think they can work for the next 2 years or 3 years. That can be very bad in terms of stability of the school system. That's the reason I kind of have reservation on this approach. I definitely understand that hiring superintendent is pretty challenging because the tenure for superintendent is actually pretty short for the whole country. And it's less than 4 years. It's a challenging situation. And because there's so much work superintendent need to do. I remember that just our superintendent told us that he need to get up at 4:30 in the morning, right? And then had a board meeting with us until 12 o'clock sometimes. I just feel pretty bad for them. And then I decided to say, we need to stop at 10 o'clock at night, every board meeting. I just feel I'm not I have reservation on this approach. Just want to share with the chair.
So there's enough division here and not number of things going on that I think we're going to hold this and we can talk about it amongst ourselves offline if we like. Delegate Hornberger, I will not ignore your motion. If we reconvene on this bill, we will start off with your motion for an amendment, okay? We may actually get the amendment written if we feel like we're going to go forward. We have to talk amongst ourselves. Delegate Miller, though, you had your hand up and we're having a good conversation here. So, but I think many of us, I think we should, find each other and talk a little bit. But go ahead, Delegate
Yeah,
Miller.
no, that's fine. Happy to talk offline.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, and you all have done a great job pointing out some of the concerns that surround this. And I'm never afraid to admit that I didn't consider them, I didn't see around the corners clearly on some of the things as you guys have on this. So well done, all of you. We're going to hold it. We're going to hold both of these bills for now. And we're done our work for today. So thank you all very much. I appreciate your time.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right.